So I chose to come to Oxford because, similarly to one of the communities where I spent significant time growing up, it is a small, close-knit town, and it felt a whole lot like home just from driving through, coupled with the fact that all students, no matter where you go, deserve a sound and equitable educational experience. And I feel that no matter where I am, no matter what opportunities are presented, that's always my goal as an educator. So when the opportunity to come to Oxford came up, it seemed like a win-win, someplace that kind of mirrored how I grew up for various segments of my childhood, but then at the same time looked like a place that was open and willing to grow and provide students with fair and equitable learning experiences. Well, I have been in education for many years in several capacities, from management to leadership, obviously teaching, which is management and leadership in all to its own right. I have spent a lot of time in school improvement, and while Oxford High School isn't a failing school, we certainly want to continue to push and build upon the work that has happened over the past few years and really stabilize in a really solid level 1 performance level. And so having gone through working with failing schools and working with schools that are trying to sustain the turnaround that they've done, as well as working with schools that are premier in their districts, particularly in some of the more affluent communities in Connecticut, they were premier districts, as the state would call them. And those experiences really gave me a breadth and depth to my educational toolkit, if you will. And it has brought me to a place where I can draw from schools that had everything and schools that had nothing. And you have all of those kind of ideas and the collaboration and those tricks up your sleeve that can really take Oxford to the next level. So it's funny, when I was doing my doctorate, I had this grand idea to look at how culture impacts the educational experience of students. My family is from the Caribbean, a lot of the islands where folks go on cruises and for, you know, summer getaways. That's what my family calls home. So for me, it was how those the cultural upbringing impacts how students view their educational experience and how they attack it, whether it's through an innate belief or, efficacy, or if it's more external factors that drive students to perform or not. And then my advisor said, "Do you want to finish this thing?" And so, because I had a lofty goal of finishing in 3 years or less, I chose to look at something a little bit more concrete in terms of the experiences of administrators in the districts and environments that they were in. So now, moving forward, I can pursue any research. So if anything, I would go back and start to look at the cultural aspect of what drives students to do well or not. Well, my greatest challenge right now, I would say, is coming up to speed and really becoming a part of the Oxford community. What I love about this town is that so many people are just rooted here and their branches stretch throughout the town. And because I'm not, from Oxford originally, I don't have yet those roots and branches. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of digging in and really just becoming entrenched in the community. And I feel like it's so important. It's so important for students to see you out and about and for, to be a part of community life. And so my greatest challenge is making sure that I maximize those opportunities. But they're only 24 hours in a day. But I think that so far so good. I've spent quite a bit of time just out and about and around, and a breakfast at Carl's before school started, and one day I just drove back and forth up different main streets just to see the different businesses, and you see the names of students that are in your building, and it's like, I wonder if so-and-so's dad owns that insurance firm, or things like that. So just putting together the connections and really becoming a part of the Oxford family beyond 7:15 to 1:45 is. Oh, it goes back to what my personal, learning curve is. I think the community is huge, and seeing the investment that people have in one another. There's so much of the staff, have roots here in one way or another, even if they're not still currently here. And I think that's our greatest strength, and really, really I'm hoping to really maximize that. I know over time it's kind of dwindled a bit, because as life changes, your investment in certain aspects of a town or in a community change. But I'm really, really hoping that we can draw back on that internal strength of the town and of the community, and really be one body. Every high school, no matter where you are, is a flagship for the town that it's in. So making sure that the town sees it that way, I think, and making it really clear that every person in the town has a place here, whether it's in legacy or whether it's in being a substitute teacher or whatever your thing is, that thing is welcome here, and we need it in order to continue to be successful. So I think that is our greatest strength, is drawing on that point. Well, we're working on it. It's hard to say. I feel like sometimes new folks come in and are a little bit too judgy and make decisions and final conclusions about what people need to change and do a little too soon, and I try not to be that way. I try to be fair. So coming in, I can't really say one particular thing is a weakness. We certainly have areas of growth, and I don't want to kind of be ambiguous and sugarcoat it. A lot of things were added, so we have a lot of quantity. We need to be sure that we're giving quality in all of those things. I think is an area that we need to continue to develop. But overall, I'm working with the staff to find out what they think the strengths are and the weaknesses are, and so that we can kind of have a laser-like focus on improving those things. So I don't want to box in and say one particular thing is a weakness at this point, but I'll get back to you.
Okay.
So I was on the track and field team. That was clearly many moons ago. But I also was in concert choir, and I think that's about it. Getting my work done. Those are the things I enjoyed. I did my sport was track and field, winter and spring, and then concert choir, which was, I feel like, sometimes a sport in and of itself. Oh, and I also was involved in the international travel program, which wasn't really an extracurricular so much as a co-curricular program. So I took Spanish in high school, and we did a joint trip to Spain and France, which was awesome. It kind of bit the international travel bug. So those are the things that I did. You know what? I think that it's interesting that you asked me about my research interests. So my doctorate my research was looked at the experience of Black female administrators in predominantly white schools and districts. So go figure that. So certainly in terms of a scholastic or academic perspective, I am more than well versed and prepared to do the job in terms of filling both categories, and then I guess thinking about it from an identity perspective and a location perspective. The message is what my message would be, or the message to myself is what my message would be to my students in Oxford, in Boston, in Springfield, in Connecticut, the multiple districts I've worked so many places on the East Coast, and my message is the same: be who you are and be that person quite perfectly, right? So I can't not be Black. Not that I would want to. I've never tried not to be, but I can't not do that. And despite all of science and the advancements, for all intents and purposes, I can't not be a woman, right? So those two things are just, if nothing else, when I wake up in the morning, are the realities that I carry with me, despite any other thing that I face on a daily basis. And so when I look at Oxford, and I guess taking it back to the question that you asked before about why Oxford, or, you know, what I find my challenges to be, those things didn't come into play until, I think, by the time I met, you know, with the superintendent, or, I mean, obviously when I showed up at the interview, because, you know, my resume doesn't necessarily read one way or the other. But for me, it's not a thing, because it's what I am, it's who I am, it's what I know. And when I wake up in the morning, you know what I mean, it's one of those things like, do you breathe or do you not? You know what I mean? You don't stop doing that, because that's how you function. It's what I know. And so, you know, Oxford, I think, is more diverse than it might give itself credit for, and certainly that other people outside of Oxford might give the town credit for. But we have students of all shades, and all of them deserve to see examples of themselves in their hallways and in their classrooms. And I would say that anywhere. You know what I mean? I don't think that having one discredits or discounts the other. I think it's just important to have all. And the same thing with being a female, and, you know, in terms of being a principal of a high school, it certainly is atypical, I think, nationally. There is, you know, there certainly are more now than there have been in years past, but overall, high school principals do trend towards being men. Well, hey, we can do it, and we can do it very well as women, and as Black people, and as any part of anyone's identity. The job can be done, and it can be done successfully. So those two things are kind of, it's the package that I'm in, but certainly gives a perspective, but I strive to be fair regardless. And I would hope that if I was a white man, I would also be fair regardless. You know what I mean? I mean, I think it's more of a thing, you know, it's a thing for the people that it's a thing for. If it bothers them, then they're bothered. I'm still not bothered, you know? And the people who aren't bothered, the students, you know, no matter what their shade, have been welcoming. And those who don't welcome the idea probably just don't, you know? But it's now Oxford can say, you know, check both boxes, kill two birds with one stone. And I'm happy to be here. And for everyone that I've met, I have had nothing but the warmest of reception. And so I feel like it's a good thing for all of us.